Hey, it's me, James, and in this video, I'm completing my lightning round Oracle card pull session series, and I'm wrapping it up with Aquarius season, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this video. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome, and if you're a returning viewer and visitor, I'd like to say welcome back. As I said in the opening, this is going to be a wrap up to this particular series, which I have now called Lightning Round Oracle Card Pull Sessions. When I started this a year ago, I did it on my birthday, and at the time I thought it was going to be a one-off, and then after I filmed the video, I thought, well, what if I did it for a year, and making each successive sign the prominent sign or theme for that particular session. So now we are wrapping up. We have come full circle in this particular video. And so the deck that I want to use as I wrap up is actually the last deck that I created in 2023. And so we're going to be working with the deck I have now called the Mitchell Playing Card Tarot. So there's a little bit of a backstory to this particular deck. This deck has been a long time in the making. Okay, so when I started making decks in 2020, I had the thought that I would make a deck that would be a combination tarot deck and playing card deck, and this is why. So a lot of you probably already know about how I got into card reading, just generally speaking. I had a dream, and in that dream I was reading playing cards, and after I woke up from that dream, I took that dream to task, meaning like I just knew it was significant and that I had to become a card reader because I had not done that in waking life ever before with a deck of playing cards. Turns out that the deck I first got, or the system that I first started working with in the physical 3D world, was a tarot deck. And so shortly after that, I had another dream that I was in a school, and I'm dating myself because back when I was in school, we used to have film projectors when we wanted to watch a movie, or the teacher wanted us to watch a movie. We had film projectors, and we had those vinyl projector screens that you would kind of roll down, right? Okay, so I was in this dream. I was in a school, in a classroom. I was the only person in the room, and there was a film being projected on one of those screens. I looked over to my right, and in a spotlight on the floor, there were houses of cards. So I walked over and I started picking up the cards. And then when I looked in my hands, I had a combination of tarot cards and playing cards. And so I knew that dream guidance was informing me not to forget about reading playing cards, because I had, at this point, only been reading tarot cards. Yes? So I said, okay, so that I had to make a part of my card reading practice a blend of tarot and playing cards. Okay, so back to 2020 when I started making decks. I tried to create a deck that was a combination of playing cards and tarot cards to honor that dream, and I had been struggling with the formatting of the cards for 3 years. Okay, so at this point, I now had my Gypsy Witch cards done, which I've shown you in previous videos, and then I did my Intuitive Cartomancy deck, a deck that I am so proud of. I love how that turned out, which I've also shown in previous videos. And so as a result of working on those two decks, I finally had a breakthrough in creating this particular deck. So a long story short, so that is the reason for the deck. I'm so proud of it, and it has now become one of my favorite decks in my personal practice to work with. So I figured, since I'm wrapping up this series, I would end on that note, working with a deck that I personally made, that I enjoy working with, and so some of you can get a sample of that. Okay, so we're going to go out the way we came in. We're going to focus on each sign. Each sign is going to get one single card pull, and I'll kind of riff on that. And we are going to be starting with Aquarius because we are now in Aquarius season. So I have the deck in hand. I'm going to take a moment to shuffle the cards. And I like shuffling them on camera so you can all see that they are being shuffled. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. And just like in previous installments of the series, I'm just going to pull one card right off the top of the deck. So, the first card being for Aquarius. So now we could look at this a couple of ways. We could look at this as a card for those who are Aquarians, of course. But for the rest of us, we could look at this as maybe a theme card for what we might experience through the Aquarius season, like I said, as a dominant or overall theme. And then you could take your card when it comes to your sign as maybe a secondary message. As I'm talking about secondary messages, another thing that we could all do is keep in mind, if you know what your moon sign is and your rising sign, you can give yourself a 3-card reading by combining all of those particular cards and their messages. Yes? Okay. So now without any further ado, let's take a look at the card for Aquarius. Okay. And so here we have the 9 of clubs. So now remember, this is a combination playing card deck and tarot deck. So the major arcana from the tarot card will be illustrated, and then we will have the playing cards representing the minor arcana. So here we have the 9 of clubs for Aquarians. This is actually a great card to have because I tend to think of Aquarians, and my moon is in Aquarius, so I'm paying attention to this message for me, that Aquarians tend to be very forward-thinking people. And so there's a reasoning behind what I'm saying about that particular aspect of Aquarius. Okay, so the 9 of clubs is the card for me that represents progress being made, right? Because the suit of clubs for me represents progress, and it's a number 9. A 9 means attainment, right? For me, the theme of the 9 represents gain or attainment, right? So the first thing I want to say is about acknowledging the progress you've made in your journey through life, right? Because this card for me can represent our spiritual journey, if you're a spiritually minded person. If not, then it's about your either an emotional journey that you've made or a psychological journey, some kind of journey that you've made through life, and you've made some progress and you're being asked to recognize that progress being made, right? So there is that. It could also be saying too, like, you're at a point now, because the 9 is also about things being wrapped up and lessons being learned, right? So it's about having somewhat of an idea about a rear view. You're taking a look back and seeing what have you learned in your journey through life up to this point, and it's setting the stage to move forward. You know, where would you like to go from here, right? Again, Aquarians being forward-thinking type people, right? So there is that. Now, there's also something having to do with humanity, because the 9 for me can represent brotherhood. So this could be more of a humanity type thing. And it could just be because also too the clubs represent the public and things of a social nature. So it could be saying too, like, maybe you are giving some thought and energy into how you are contributing to the larger society, the world as a whole. You know, what are you doing in terms of your contribution? Because clubs can also represent work. So this could be work in business, right? Or it could be work meaning like I'm putting effort into something, right? I'm working towards something, which is going to put some, meaning I have to put some effort into it, I should say. So there are two ways to look at that. I'm tending to go with my first impulse is to take a look at your journey through life up to this point, celebrate the progress that you've made, and as you're going forward, consider what at this stage in your journey do you need to kind of wrap up, or, you know, what lessons can you take as you move forward. So that is what I want to offer to those of us who are Aquarians, whether it's your sun sign, moon sign, or rising sign. Yes? Okay. So I'm having my list here. If you are no stranger to these videos, you know I have to write things down in terms of the order, or else I'll go out of order, or I'll forget a sign altogether. Okay, so now that brings me to our next sign, which is Pisces, and this is another significant card for me because my sun sign is in Pisces. Okay, so for Piscean people, oh, I love this card. Okay, so here we have the Chariot, which is a major arcana card. So now, major arcana cards for me when I'm reading tarot cards carry more weight because they represent things that are unfolding that are either of a significant or important nature, yes, or a major lesson or a spiritual principle that is going to be learned throughout this particular season, right? So the Chariot kind of is just like I talked about with the previous card, the 9 of clubs, Because for me, the Chariot is all about the journey and the destination, right? It's about goals. So where, my fellow Pisceans, do you see yourself going forward here? Again, it's about taking a look at your journey in life. You've arrived, and now at this particular point, where do you see yourself going? What is the goal? What is the destination? And then consider, once you realize what your destination is and you realize your starting point, what are the steps you might need to take in between to get you from where you are to where you'd like to be? Yeah? So now, in the image, I have overlaid, in the natural background, I have overlaid Metatron's cube. And this is because Metatron is a personal angelic guide, has been traveling with me. Yes, I went there. Traveling with me for a very long time in my spiritual journey. And so there may be a huge spiritual component to the journey in your life right now. There may be a particular spiritual phase. Metatron energy is really great because it supports you in establishing where you want to go, and then also providing you the energy to move through that particular experience, that particular phase, that particular journey. It could also be for those of you who may be more metaphysical or esoteric minded, that this could be a nod to work with either Metatron specifically if you're working with angels, or that you're going to be working with sacred geometry, right? So there is that, because Metatron's cube is pictured here, and it could also be a nod to the idea that the Merkaba, another name for Metatron's cube, translates to chariot, which is why I have it pictured in the image, right? So again, this could just be another nod to pay attention to your journey in life. What goals or destinations do you have in mind? How are you going to go about getting there? And, again, working with angelic energy, Metatron in particular, or that you're going to be working with sacred geometry if that is of interest to you, if you're feeling called, led, or guided to that. The other thing I want to say too, this may be a time to really work on clearing your energetic field, because Metatron is also wonderful in helping us clear our energetic fields. So it could just be a matter of clearing things out. So now, if that's very woo-woo for you and you're not into any of that, it can just be a matter of what do you need to clear out of your life at this point, right? So again, it's just like the Nine of Clubs. It's about celebrating the progress you've made and making plans to move forward. So that is what I want to offer regarding the Chariot. And that was for Piscean people. Next up, we have Aries. So here we have another major arcana card. So here we have the Magician. I love this because this image for me is a nod to the minor arcana. So here in the image, I have a cardist, and he's holding up the Ace of Spades. So there's two messages here. Number one, going with the Magician, this is about your talent, your skill, your ability, and putting them to, for lack of a better way of saying it, right and perfect use. So it could just be a matter of you are either A, contemplating what you want to do with your current talent, skills, or abilities, or that you are in a stage, because this is the number one card, and so the one represents a period of initiation, the starting point of something new, yeah? So it could just be a matter of I'm discovering a new talent or skill, and I want to develop that some more. So it's twofold. Either one, working with the current talent, gift, or ability, and expounding on that, or expanding that gift, or I'm discovering that I have another gift or talent that I want to explore and I want to develop further, right? So there is that. So now, also too, holding up the Ace of Spades. So the Ace of Spades carries some particular meanings for me in playing cartomancy. So the first is going more with what I talked about with the Chariot in terms of metaphysics and esoterica. This is another nod to that kind of leaning, right? Because the Ace of Spades can represent mystical wisdom, esoteric knowledge, occult knowledge, and delving more into that. The Ace of Spades in some circles is known as the Order of the Magi card, right? So it could be a nod for fellow magical practitioners. So that could be people who call themselves witches, people who call themselves ceremonial magicians, things like that. And you are embarking on your magical path and you realize there is a lot of study, right? We are encouraged as magical practitioners to read, read, read. So it could just be a matter of embarking on that path, and there's a great deal of study, there's a great deal of research, there's a great deal of knowledge to be had or gained through certain texts, sacred texts, yeah, and working with that, right? It's about going deeper, it's about going beyond the physical, right? That's what I want to offer with the idea that it's talking about the order of the Magi, right? The other thing here could be you are embarking on a great deal of change. The Ace of Spades is known as the Death card, and I don't read it like that. I tend to liken it to the idea of embarking on a great journey of transformation, right? So there's a theme here so far with these three cards. There's a great deal of change or transformation, right? And each card that's been pulled may be going about it a different way, yeah, but the theme is the same. We're all undergoing a great process of change and transformation, and the expression of it might be different, right? Because Ace of Spades for me can represent transforming your life, right? So it could be a matter of things coming to an end, and you're in that transition phase about the ending and the beginning, right? And giving some thought energy to that. Spades for me represents the mind, right? So giving some thought energy into how you're going to rebuild your life, right? So it could just be a matter of, it reminds me of when my brother was into interior design, and I used to visit his house quite often back then, and I would always say, your house seems to be under construction, right? So it's just a matter of your life is right now under construction, right? And you're giving some thought energies to what you want to construct, what you want to build at this particular point in your life, right? And there may be a particular talent, skill, or ability in that process that's going to help you with the rebuilding aspect of that, yeah? The other thing I want to say about the Ace of Spades is that it could just represent, this is a time where you are going to be making a major decision in your life, because Ace of Spades for me can represent a choice or a decision needing to be made. So that is the Magician, and that was for Aries people. So now we're moving from Aries to Taurus, and the card we have here is the Two of Spades. Okay, so now for Taurus people, Spades for me is the suit that can represent problems, difficulties, challenges, blocks, okay? So with the two, it could represent a couple of things. Number one, if I go back to what I talked about with the Ace of Spades and the Magician card, then this could be a matter of needing to reconcile something in your mind, because the first thing is that on an internal level, this could be a mental conflict, you know, so it could be opposing ideas, conflicting thoughts and ideas, you know, needing to reconcile something in your mind about that. It could also be a state of indecision, like with the Ace of Spades being a card about needing to make a decision here, this card might suggest like there's some sort of difficulty, excuse me, regarding a choice, because there's two options here, right? And so I'm stuck to some degree in terms of making a choice or decision. So that may be one aspect if I go with the mental internal aspect. The other thing going external, this could be a signal that there is a need to reconcile an issue in an existing relationship, right? Because for me, this card can represent conflict in a relationship. If we go with the idea that the two is a number of relationship, then the Spades would be conflict with that and needing to reconcile that. For me, sometimes this card is about, you know, knowing when to share what's on your mind and knowing when to keep your thoughts to yourself, yeah? So there is that. So there may be like a conflict with, you know, sharing information versus keeping information to yourself, right? But either way, this is about working on reconciling either an internal conflict or an external conflict, meaning like I'm in conflict with another person. And it could just be a matter of the best way to resolve it is to just agree to disagree, rather than continuing to butt heads or continuing to get the person to understand your point of view. It could just be a matter of like, this is just going to be an issue we need to agree to disagree on. So that is what I want to offer with the Two of Spades. And that was for Taurus. Next up we have Gemini, and we have a theme here. So now here we have another 2 card for Gemini people, and we have the Two of Clubs. Okay, so now kind of a similar thing is that with the Two of Spades, this is going to be a little bit of a nuance here with that. So here we have another situation with a relationship to some degree. Now, with this card, it could be either a friendship or a working relationship, because for me, the suit of clubs, remember, is about public or social, which is why we have the friendship aspect of it, right? People I know socially, or I relate to socially, because the two is about relations, right? I relate to socially. Or clubs can be about work or business, so it could be a relationship that is work related or business related, right? It could also be too, like, we are taking the steps to make a relationship work, right? Because the suit of clubs, again, is about work and business, but also work and effort. So it's about, I'm putting some effort into making a relationship work, right? And remember now here, as I'm talking about the idea about a working relationship, it takes two people to make a relationship work. Whereas also too, and with the two of spades, I'm going to come back to that card for a moment, it also takes two people to make a relationship not work, right? So it could just be a matter that both parties are interested in making the relationship work. And so for you, you have to concern yourself with what are you willing to do on your side of the line to make the relationship work better, right? The other thing here is that this card can also be about something that is of mutual benefit. So in relationships, it needs to be mutually beneficial for each party involved, right, in order for it to work. Now, the other thing I will say about this particular card, if you are self-employed, or maybe even if you work, this is a card about service, right? Because the two is about offering help or assistance, right? So it could just be a matter of, a job or a business that is service-based, right? Offering help or assistance to the public at large. So it could just be you giving some thought energy into that particular thing. Now, if you are self-employed, this card could also be about a working relationship, meaning like forming a business partnership with another person, right? And how do you make that work, right? Who's going to do what in terms of work within that particular enterprise? So there is that. There could also be about issues with co-workers that we need to maybe kind of move through over this particular season. So I'm seeing that. The other thing that I want to say about the Two of Clubs is that this card is also a card about gifts, right? So it brings me back to what I talked about with the Magician card earlier, about this idea about, the right and perfect use of your gifts, your talents, your abilities, right? So it's about maybe giving some energy, thought energy into like, what is the gift or the talent that I have that would be of benefit? Remember, this is about mutually beneficial. That would be of benefit to other people, meaning like it would be in your best interest to share the gift, but it would be also in the best interest of those receiving the gift, right? When I talk about gifts or talents or abilities, I've come to the understanding in my own personal practice that we are the custodians of whatever the gift is, right? The gift is really meant for other people. We are the custodian of that. So what does that mean? That means that it is my job, right? When it comes to the gift, it is my job to work with it, to hone it, to perfect it to the best of my ability, and then offer it to other people in some shape, form, or fashion, right? So that is what I want to offer with the Two of Clubs, and that was for Gemini. Next up, we have Cancer. Card for Cancer is Seven of Spades. So now, again, remember the suit of spades can represent challenges, blocks, obstacles, yeah? The 7 is a very spiritual number. So for me, it can represent, being in a place where we are exploring our spirituality, and it's through the lens of difficulties, problems, challenges, yeah? For me, if you are spiritually minded, this card is suggesting that you lean into your spiritual understanding to help you move through some difficulty or challenge, right? The 7, in a positive sense, is about improvement. So it could just be like I'm putting energy, thought energy, right? Remember, into improving a problem, difficulty, or challenge, right? The other thing here, going with the spiritual aspect of the 7, is that whatever the case may be, this is about applying faith or needing to have faith as you're moving through that particular experience, yeah? So it could be a person's undergoing some form of spiritual crisis or a crisis of faith. And with that in mind, it's about usually the challenges are a sign that you are needing to either consider or reconsider what you believe to be true spiritually speaking, or that your spirituality is like a muscle, and this is a time to flex that spiritual muscle, right? To really put into practice or apply what it is that you know to be true spiritually speaking, right? This is an opportunity for growth in that particular aspect. Now, the other thing here to consider in a more challenging sense, this card can show up when there's a bit of a stagnation or delay and we're moving through it, right? So now with that in mind, the 7 is a number of self-awareness, right? If you're not really into the spirituality, aspect of it, then it's really about, it's offering you an opportunity for self-awareness or personal insight, right? So it could just be a matter of what is the sense of stagnation or delay informing me about me, right? It could just be a matter of whatever it is that you're trying to pursue. Maybe now is not the time to pursue that. If you're finding yourself coming up against all sorts of challenges or blocks in that, it could just be a larger sign that maybe this is not the time to move through that. Kind of put it on hold. Maybe put your attention or focus into other things, and then allow yourself to kind of maybe get a sense of when the timing could be better or more perfect for you, right? So there's a couple of ways of looking at the 7 of Spades. That was for Cancer. Next up we have Leo. Here we have a major arcana card. We have the Sun card. So this is the best card for me anyway in a tarot deck. So this is about clarity. It's about illumination, right? Because when the sun is up, you can see everything clearly. So for Leo people, and the other thing, I'll get to this in a moment. For Leo people, this is a wonderful card. It offers moving into a space where you are really clear on something. You are enlightened about something, right? Something has been illuminated for you. Now, the part that got me excited when I looked at my paper is that this is the ruling planet for Leo people. So I like the fact that your ruling planet is showing up as a card for you at this particular moment, right? So this is really about success, right? For you, right? It's about you really being in alignment with who you are, right? This is really about expressing who you are. This is about your brilliance, your radiance, yeah, things like that, right? Your creative genius, right? And putting that front and center, so to speak, right? The other thing could be that I'm seeing in my mind the image from Tower de Marseille. I'm seeing the Sun card in that, and there's children on that card. So this could be for some Leo people. There could be some focus on either something that has to do with your childhood. Remember, that could be the clarity and the enlightenment, something from your own childhood, your own past, and you're learning a major lesson about that, a major aha. Or there's some sort of focus or attention on your own children if you happen to be a Leo who is a parent. Because when I see that depiction, it usually makes me think of things having to do with either childhood influences or children, generally speaking, right? And it could be a matter of you fostering a greater sense of creative genius within your own children, yeah? The last thing I will say about the Sun card, it's about, again, there's a theme here. This card is also about your achievements, right? And basking in the afterglow of achieving something of some significance or importance to you, right? So there is that about, honoring the achievements that you've made, right? Celebrating that fact. But it could also be too, like somebody is moving through, and when I say somebody, a particular Leo person is moving through a period of personal freedom, right? And what does that look like for you? Because this is card number 19. 19 reduces to 10, which is a transition number, right? But it also represents endings and beginnings, and that brings us back to a 1. So 19 reduces to 10, and then the 10 reduces to 1. So, there's this thing about coming to a major phase of completion that's setting the stage for a new phase or new chapter. Maybe one that you are very excited about. I tend to think of Leos as being, a fiery, passionate type people, yeah? So the passion could be a lot of enthusiasm for this new phase, this new chapter that is unfolding for you, right? So again, this is about, maybe a personal achievement, setting the stage for a new phase, new chapter. It could be a matter of you either focusing on some awareness that is wrapped up in a childhood influence or experience, or that you are taking time to put focus and energy on your own children and their growth and development. Yeah. All right, so that's what I want to offer with the sun. That was for Leo, like I said. Next up, we have Virgo. Here we have the 5 of Clubs. Okay, so for Virgo people, if you are out in the working world, then this card could suggest some sort of changes within job or business, right? For me, the 5 is a number of change. So the other thing could be, like, for instance, you could be leaving your current job and maybe moving into working for yourself. That would be a job or career change. Or that maybe you've taken some time off from being out in the working world, and this card would suggest a return to that. Because this card can also be about job interviews. Yeah, so it could be a matter of, some sort of job change, and there may be an interview process involved in that kind of thing. It could also be that you are, in terms of work with Clubs being like work or effort, that you moving into a very busy time. For me, the 5 is about being hands-on. So it could be a matter of, like, I'm busy with activity, right? The 5 with the hands would represent activity. I'm busy with activity. Or that I'm doing work in which I'm hands-on, meaning I'm working with my hands to some degree, right? So there is that. That's usually my first impulse with this card, is about changes with work or business or something job related. And it may involve an interview process. Now, this could also be about meetings and introductions, because I'm seeing the image that I have chosen for this card in my intuitive cartomancy deck, and in that image there is a woman who is shaking hands with another person. So this could be about meetings, being introduced to people. Again, Clubs being about the public and social, being about being introduced to people who may be able to help you move through a particular experience. Because now remember, the Clubs is also about making progress, right? So it could just be being introduced to people who are going to be helping you make some sort of significant progress in your journey through life, right? Or just matter of offering some assistance with something that you are working on or working through. But it could just be a matter of also too, if I take the work and business aspect out of it, you're working on changing something in your life, and you need to be hands-on. It is going to require some work or effort on your part. Yeah? That's what I want to offer with the 5 of Clubs. That was for Virgo. Next up, we have Libra. Here we have the Ace of Diamonds. Okay, so now this is the card that talks about commitment, because its chief message is that it can represent a diamond ring. So for me, that is symbolic of a couple of things. Number one, engagement. Like, how engaging are you in certain aspects of your life? There may be one particular aspect of your life this particular season that you need to be really committed to and engaged in, right? The Ace, remember now, is a card or a number that talks about initiation or a new phase or the beginning of something, right? So this could be the beginning of something in your material 3D experience, right? But it requires some level of commitment and engagement on your part. Now, the other meaning of this card could be a letter. So this could be a nice way of saying paying attention to correspondences this particular season, either what it is that you're going to be receiving, meaning like correspondences to other people. And when we talk about letter, in this day and age being digital, it could be emails, text messages, anything written, right? That is a message sent to you. So paying attention to that, or be more mindful about the messages that you are sending out to other people, right? But this is a significant period for you, a new period opening up in your material world. So that could be finance, it could be your physical well-being, it could be your career, all those kinds of things. And it could just be a matter of you being more committed to initiating something, starting something. It's going to require some engagement on your part. So I'm asking, what else do I want to say about this card? Because I'm feeling like there's something else I want to say. Yes. So again, for me, diamonds can also represent energy. So it's just a matter of, the energy. You will get the reward, right? Because diamonds represent value and worth and reward. You will get the reward based on the level of energy you put into it. That's what I want to say with the diamond. Ace of diamonds. Okay, so that was for Libra. I'm coming back. So this may be a period where we get to kind of reevaluate what we believe to be true for us, what we believe to be valuable in our life. So it could be a matter of like there's something going on that's getting you to assess or reassess your value system, right? Because I talked about tangible things and the value that they hold, but it could also be about your value system. So there may be something about reassessing something that you believe to be of value to you in a more intangible sense. Now I'm feeling complete. Okay, so now we are moving to Scorpio. Oh, one of my favorite cards. So here we have the High Priestess, right? And I love this for Scorpio people because Scorpio is a water sign, right? And the planet that's associated with this is the moon, right? So there's this sense about being really in touch with your intuition, right? And I tend to go with the idea that water signs in particular are highly intuitive signs. So we have Pisceans, we have Cancerians, and we have Scorpio people, right? It's being really, really intuitive, right? So there could be a matter of like really being led and guided by your intuition, right? So there is that. Now, this is another card that talks about the metaphysical and the occult, which is a natural byproduct of Scorpio. Like Scorpio rules all the things that are occult-like, right? So this could just be a matter of you leaning more into that or exploring that more deeply if that resonates with you. And I went with the idea in the image because I wanted in my major arcana cards really not to have people in them. I wanted to kind of keep them more symbolic in nature to kind of go along with the symbolism, if you will, in the playing card pips. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of keep that as a theme. So here we have a library, right? So this could just be about exploring deeper knowledge, reading up on things, researching things, all those kinds of things. It could also be a nod about going within, right? Your inner temple, right? I'm thinking about the RWS, and that's for Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, where we have the High Priestess and sitting in the temple, right? So, but that's a nod for your inner temple, right? And then maybe exploring things and having awareness. That's all the lights going on in the image, right? So you come to some degree of awareness or enlightenment by going within, right? And again, that's what they talk about in more esoteric and occult circles, about this idea about your temple, right? So, I talked about ceremonial magicians, right? So they have the idea of their temple, but we also have the idea about our inner temple, yeah? So there is that. So, so for me, this is about the metaphysical, the esoteric, the occult, exploring that more fully or more deeply, getting more into those practices. Again, it could also be about, just honoring your intuition, really taking the time to maybe explore how your intuition speaks to you in terms of, greater growth and development on that level. Now, the other thing could be with the High Priestess, this is about teaching, right? So there may be something that you are being called to teach to other people. And again, it may have more of a esoteric or metaphysical flair or flavor to it. Or that you are reclaiming something about yourself that you have lost. And the reason being is, and I don't know if you can see clearly in this image, but in my former iteration of this deck, there was a piece of paper at the bottom of the card. And so for me, that was about like something being lost and then found. So it could be either like I'm going through paperwork or documentations and I'm finding something that I had recorded, documentation, and I rediscovered it. Like I couldn't find it and I actually discovered it or rediscovered it. Or there's some aspect of myself that I've lost, right? A page out of your book of life, and you have reclaimed it or rediscovered it. So some aspect of myself that I've lost in the busyness of life or in my interactions with life, you know, losing an aspect of yourself, maybe in a particular relationship. Now, this is a number 2 card, right? So we have this idea about relations and relationships, right? And I've rediscovered that aspect of myself. And again, that would be the lights. Now, the last thing I want to say is that this could also be a pun for a hall, like a hallway. So about, again, this idea about going through a transition, I think that's what a lot of the cards are talking about. Like each of us, and again, it's being expressed differently based on the card, but there's this theme about going through some sort of transition or transitional phase or moment, yeah? Because the hall is a pun for a transition. The hallway represents transition because we come out of one room, enter into a hallway, and it leads us into another room, right? Or another space. So maybe that is a message that is of some resonance to you. But as what I want to say with the High Priestess, that was for Scorpio. Next up we have Sagittarius. Okay, and here we have the 8 of Spades. Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to say here with this. First thing is that this is a card for me that means, you know, checking your inner psychology. And why do I say that? Because one of the meanings of this card could be a visit to the doctor in the literal sense, right? And I have to be careful here because my disclaimer is I am not a medical professional, so I don't offer anything having to do with like a sense of prognosis or diagnosis, yeah? But one of its meanings could be a visit to the doctor, but it's also about psychology. So again, it's about checking your inner psychology, again with the spades being about the mind, right? And so maybe working through something having to do with your inner psychology. That's well put that. Now, it could also be in a literal sense that, you know, if your physical well-being is something that is presenting a situation for you, then maybe it's about you actually seeing a doctor or visiting a doctor who could help in your recovery process. Now, one of the things I will say, this is a card for me that represents headaches. And it's so funny that I'm holding this card up because I had intended to actually film this video yesterday, the day before, but I was kind of sidelined with a headache. So it could just be a matter of 2 things. Number 1, be mindful of tracking, if you are a person who experiences headaches, then tracking what could be the causations of those headaches. Is it, I'll give some examples for me. So sometimes changes in barometric pressure causes headaches for me. So it could be something of that nature. So it could be something that is more environmentally based. It could also be that, you know, sometimes if I go too long without eating, like too long in between meals, I will get a headache. So it could be a matter of, is it something of a habit or a behavior, and you need to modify that. And that would be, again, inner psychology, right? Because for me, part of being a psychologist, that's my educational background, is about, you know, identifying thoughts and thought patterns, but also the behaviors that are in alignment with those particular thought patterns, right? So we call that behavior modification. So is there some sort of behavior that needs to be modified that would help improve some area of your life, right? Because the 8 is a number of organization, right? So it could just be a matter of, maybe it could just be a matter of you working towards a greater sense of organization in your life, generally speaking, yeah? Other aspects of this, if we're talking about relationships, this is a card that for me can represent injustice. So it could just be a matter of you looking at relationships in which you are not being treated fairly, right? So now it could be twofold. You know, number 1, you're experiencing unfair treatment from other people around you, or that maybe how are you treating other people unfairly? And is there a way that you could kind of change that energy or that dynamic, right? But I'm going to go with the first one more than the second. It's about you identifying in ways that you are being treated unfairly, and what are you willing to do to change that energy, to change that dynamic, right? And then the last thing I will say, going with the High Priestess, that's the previous card, sometimes this card is about investigation. So it could be a matter of investigating something in terms of gaining some insight, some information, some guidance about how to move through it, right? So it could just be a matter about investigating, but it's investigating to gain more information or some sort of knowledge that you don't have in the moment, right? So again, 8 of Spades, it's about, you know, taking a look at your inner psychology, maybe needing to do some investigation, meaning research or analysis on a situation, right? Needing to look into it more deeply, like being your own detective. Yeah, that's the best thing I want to say. And then, of course, looking at the ways that maybe you are experiencing unfair treatment in your external world. So that's what I want to offer with the Eight of Spades. That was for Sagittarius. And then the last card, rounding out this video, is for Capricorn. And here we have the Eight of Diamonds. Okay, so now I had a feeling that this card was going to show up, and I didn't know which sign. So I already know what I need to say about it. Because sometimes I get what I call a heads up with certain cards, because I see them before, and I kind of see myself in my mind saying what I need to say about the card when it turns up. So I had one of those moments with this card. Okay, so the 8 again is about organization, but this card talks about your finances. So this is about record keeping, bookkeeping, accounting, right? And now we're moving into that season where we're preparing to get taxes done. So it could be like in the literal 3D sense that you are being encouraged to get your finances organized in preparation for tax season. Yeah, so again, it's about record keeping, bookkeeping, accounting, right? But what I was led to say is that for me, this card can also be about spectacles, right? I wear eyeglasses. And so recently, I just had my eyes checked, right? So I'm filming this on Monday, January the 22nd. And I went to have my eyes checked on this past Friday. So I believe that was the 19th, if I'm going back correctly in time, right? So that was the 19th. All right, so it could be, and again, me putting out there that I am not a medical professional, but it could be, really that this may be the time to have your eyes checked. That's literal, right? And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because for me, when I first went to the optometrist that I have now, so I went to her a year ago this past Friday. And when I first went to her, because it was a new optometrist, she looked at my scans of my eyes, and she put me on a list of being what's called glaucoma suspect, which means that there was some indication for her, possibly, that I could develop glaucoma over time. Well, I am happy to say that with this follow-up visit, she took me off the list. I am no longer a glaucoma suspect. She just realized that because that was her first time seeing me, she did not know that my eyes were the way they were, like genetically speaking. It's not glaucoma. She just didn't know. But so I was relieved to be taken off the list. So it could just be a matter of you needing to have your eyes checked so they could remove or eliminate the possibility of something. That's one possibility. Or that, you have an exam and you realize that your prescription needs to be changed, because that was the other thing that happened to me. I had to have, and it's not that I needed to have, it was a huge change in prescription. It was somewhat subtle or minor, but I still went and had the prescription filled anyway. So I will be getting new glasses, right? So there is that. Now, if it's not the literal, then the more metaphorical idea of my story is about changing the way that you are seeing something, right? Changing your view, your perspective, your outlook, right? Because corrective lenses help us see things differently, better, right? It could be the metaphorical, like, what do you need to see differently in your life? Right? And would you be willing to put some energy, right? Diamonds are energy. Would you be willing to put some energy into seeing the situation differently? It's akin to me for if you're tarot fluent, like the hangman, right? The hangman is hanging upside down, and one of its chief meanings for me anyway is about a change in outlook. He's hanging upside down, which allows him to see his world differently than if he was standing on his feet upright, yeah? So what would you be willing to change in terms of outlook? What would you be willing to see differently? Right? Because again, this is about spectacles. So it could be spectacles in the literal sense or spectacles in what I'm seeing. Right? So again, it could be on the financial front, organizing your financial records, taking a look at bookkeeping, accounting. Right? How do I get my money straight, kind of thing. One way to do that is to pay attention to the money that goes in and out, because the 8 is the number of circulation for me, right? It highlights the circulatory system, and in money and finance, that's about money in circulation, right? The law, the universal law of circulation, what goes in and what comes out. So it could just be a matter of doing that, taking a closer look at that, right? Or something about, either your literal eyesight or metaphorical, your vision. Like, what do you envision with your life? And again, that would be a nice way to kind of wrap this up for Capricorn. This idea about going forward, like, what's the vision that you are holding for your life at this point in time? And are you willing to put the energy into making that vision your newfound reality? Yeah? And so that is what I'm going to offer for Capricorn. And that is going to wrap up this particular Oracle card pull lightning round session, and it's going to wrap up the series. And so now that I've done this for a year, I committed myself to a year. So now that I've done that, I'm going to now consider what other forms will the readings that I want to offer to the public take. Will they be monthly? Will they be weekly? I'm kind of excited to kind of explore that. So stay tuned in this space, because I know I'm going to be back presenting readings for the collective. I just don't know what form they're going to be taking. I'm just going to kind of sit with that idea and be led and guided by my intuition, my inner knowing, and what the divine, the larger universal sense, has in store. So thank you so much for tuning in and joining me for this video. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you again in this space at some point in the future. So until then, take care and be well.
Perfect.